about Diana Walstad, or more specifically, her method of aquarium keeping. Walstad method aquariums can be a little bit intimidating, but I don't want you to be scared because honestly they are way easier than the traditional method of aquarium keeping. Like pretty much everything in my life, I like to set my things up to be high maintenance at the beginning and then low maintenance later on. And Walstad aquariums are absolutely perfect for that. So let's start at the beginning. Diana Walstad is an ecologist and aquarium keeper and breeder who has written a book called The Ecology of the Planted Aquarium. I guess it's not the ecology, it's just ecology. One of the most intimidating and annoying things about Walstad method is that as soon as you start looking into it, you get a bunch of people who are just like, read the dang book. And while that's true and the book is extremely helpful and you totally should read the book, there are parts of it that are super scientifically dense and that can be really intimidating and frustrating. If you're looking at it and you're like, this is a lot of stuff that doesn't make any sense to me, then you could just skip it. Maybe you read a different chapter, maybe you flip through, maybe you read the whole thing straight through and don't understand half of it, and then you read the whole thing again. Maybe you skip something now, and then once you've gotten a hang of the other stuff, then you come back. But let's start with just the basics of aquariums in general. It's also just the basics of life, but we're gonna just focus on how it works in an aquarium. The nitrogen cycle as it applies to aquariums is the system in which a fish will poop and other things will clean it up. Usually that is bacteria, but it can also be plants. It can also be a combination. The most important thing to understand about the nitrogen cycle is that it is essential in order for your fish to be healthy. Aquariums are closed systems, so they can only have what you put in there, and whatever you put in there will be there forever if it is not removed. When you add fish food that decomposes or a fish poops, that adds ammonia to the tank. Ammonia in small amounts for a small period of time is not going to be fatal. But if ammonia continues to get higher or the ammonia levels stay high for a long time, it can kill your fish. So the goal of the nitrogen cycle is to remove that ammonia. Now, the traditional aquarium keeping uses bacteria to do that. One of the things that Walstad talks about in her books is that plants and bacteria are actually in competition with each other. They both consume ammonia, so if there's no bacteria in the system, they will take the ammonia and you will have no nitrates. Traditional aquarium keeping, you can kind of do any kind of substrate because your substrate's not important to the system. But in Walstad method, the substrate is one of the most important things. So to start with in your tank, you need to put organic, non-fertilizer potting soil. Some fertilizer types can be okay, but again, anything you put in there is going to be there forever, so it's best to avoid them if you can. It's getting harder and harder to find natural organic potting soil that's not full of fertilizers, but you kind of just gotta work with what you can. You also want to make sure that the potting soil you use does not have perlite, and if you want to get fancy, you can sift your potting soil, but that's another thing that's not totally required. So you start by adding an inch of potting soil, and then from there you add 1 to 2 inches of sand. I personally like to do 2 inches. You can see that I did not do that in this one, and I'm probably gonna have to add some sand on top at some point because my loaches do like to dig in the sand a little bit. Now it's very important that you use sand and not gravel because gravel allows for leaching and it also can allow for some of the dirt to just come up and it just mucks up your tank. The dirt coming through isn't that big a deal, but it does just add more decomposition to your tank, so it's best to avoid it if you can, or remove it if some dirt does come through. One of the chapters in Walstad's book, which a lot of people like to neglect, is called The Aerial Advantage. The aerial advantage is all about floating plants. These are things like lily pads, but more commonly in aquariums, it'll be things like duckweed, redroot floaters, water lettuce. She talks about water lettuce a lot. That's one of her favorites. Floaters are amazing because they're able to get a lot more light, which allows them to really thrive in a way that a lot of other plants don't. Walstad also talks a lot about algae. If you have an algae issue, honestly, just turn off the lights. Cover it in a sheet if you want to. No light, no algae. Your plants and fish are going to be fine without light for like a week, and it will usually effectively get rid of your algae. Walstad also talks about how you want to avoid very big decorations because these things just take away from what you're able to put into the soil, and you need things to be rooting in your soil in order for it to be an effective tank. There's a lot of disagreement about exactly how many plants you need, but honestly, the more the better. A commonly used amount is 50% or 75%. You want at least 50 or 75% of your tank to be full of plants. Whether that's planted ones, aerial ones, or the ones that live in the water column, like my happy little guppy grass back here. The types of plants is honestly not important. My method is I just take any plants I can get and throw them in there, and whatever survives, great. In my turtle tank, that is pretty much nothing because she will eat everything. I want to talk a little bit about purist Walstad method people. These are people who don't use any filtration whatsoever. Filtration is still very helpful. It gives a place for bacteria to live, and most importantly, it creates movement in your water, which you really need. Your fish swimming around is going to give a little bit, but you need more than that for it to really aerate the water. I like to do canister filters because they're really quiet, and in my smaller tanks I like to do sponge filters. It's just enough to get the water moving to keep things healthy. It's weird because it seems like a lot of people read this book and took some of it the wrong way. Walstad never says that you should just abandon all filtration. She's just providing additional filtration options in the form of plants, which will do some of the filtration for you. But she still keeps filters in all of her tanks, and the ones that she tries without filters are not as successful. If you want to have a purely filterless situation, you can, and you're going to want it to be very lowly stocked. That's another very important aspect of Walstad method aquariums in general, is you don't want to overstock. Too much bioload is going to set off your system in a really bad way, and the plants won't be able to keep up. If what you want is a low maintenance aquarium that you only have to do water changes on every 4-6 months or so, the more you put in there, the more work you're gonna have to do. I personally like to keep mine high plants and low stock so that I can really reduce the number of water changes that I have to do. So let's wrap this up with a very simple list of things that are the most important, and I don't have a number because I did not write this down, so I'm just gonna tell you. Most important aspects of Walstad method are low stocking, don't have a ton of fish. High plant stocking, have as many plants as you want. Honestly, you can't have too many plants. Make sure you have water movement in some form, whether that be a bubbler or a filter, and make sure that you have dirt in your aquarium topped with sand. I hope that helped clear some things up instead of making it more confusing for you. I'd love to talk about this a ton more, so please tell me what I didn't explain very well and need to go more in depth in future videos. I am very passionate about this because I just freaking love aquariums. And if you want to read Ecology of the Planted Aquarium, I do really recommend it. It is available in physical form for purchase, and I know it is also available out there as a PDF, but if you're getting it as a PDF in a free version, be sure to also buy the physical book to support Diana, because she deserves it. I personally have barely touched this book because I read things in PDF form a lot more, and I like to actually put them into an app called Speechify, which will read it to me, which is super helpful as someone who was, spending many hours sewing masks last year, so it was really helpful to be able to listen to Ecology of the Planted Aquarium rather than reading it. Anyway, happy holidays, and feel free to check out my Etsy store if you need any masks. Or other stuff. I've started to sew some other things like menstrual pads and fidget toys. So check it out. Have a wonderful day. Diana Walstad is an ecologist, an aquarist? I don't actually know how to say that word. I've only ever typed it.